Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Eric.
Thanks, Fred. Glad to be back.
Oh, it's great to have you back. It's been a long time since we've had a conversation about Pinehurst and about your book, and today we're going to bring them both back.
Great. Okay. Glad to be here.
Good. But first, I wanted to ask you about Bionic gloves.
Yes.
I just got off the phone with the folks over at Bionic Gloves. We did a show featuring them a couple episodes back, and I've become a huge believer. They actually are having me be a test dummy now on using glove on left and right hand, which I've never even thought of.
Yeah.
I would love your insight on the value of having a glove on both hands for the amateur golfer.
Well, I think, at least right off the bat, I think most golfers are so accustomed to just one glove, but I would agree that with that product, at least, the way it allows you to hang on to the club and minimizes the stress on the hands if you have arthritis, you got to have both. You got to go with left and right for sure. Great product.
Yeah. I'm not arthritic, but I definitely, in the 1.5 rounds that I've played with it so far, I've definitely noticed less fatigue, and it is noticeable, which I'm really surprised. I didn't know my hands were fatigued until I tried this.
Well, I'd say the way it's designed, it allows you to hang onto the club nicely, and there's a little bit less twisting of the club face, or the grip rather, in your hands if you hit off-center shots. So it's a great product. I'm a big fan as well. We have a lot of students that we encounter that need that type of support in their hands for their arthritic hands, as well as it allows them to hang onto the club a little bit better. So great product.
And I understand you help them with a lot of their research.
We've done some research for their product, just to look at the durability of the product, also the influence of the product on the golfer's ability to hang onto the club at impact, or that torquing, kind of minimizing some of the torquing. It's a good product for sure.
Awesome.
It does a nice job, yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that with me. So 2 main topics I want to cover with you today. One, Pinehurst, and the 9 courses that are Pinehurst, and your long time, I would say love affair, but your long time employment there.
Sure.
And talk about the course. And then the second thing I'd like to finish up with is go back to your book, Instinct Putting, which we haven't talked about in a long time, and your unique teaching method of looking at the hole as opposed to looking at the ball when you're putting.
Sure.
Great. But first, let's talk about Pinehurst for a minute. Even more than a minute, because you've got 9 golf courses there. Now, how long have you been at Pinehurst?
33 years.
Phenomenal. And all as a teaching professional?
I came as an intern, and then after probably a year or so, was moved into more of a teaching role, just with my background in California. I'd watched Jim Hardy teach quite a bit, and Hank Haney was here at the time, and Hank hired me as an intern, and so it just kind of fit into the background I had with working with Jim Hardy.
Oh, so you've had some pretty amazing mentors.
I've had that really wonderful mentors for sure. Yeah, a lot of great people have offered me advice and guidance for years, and I've been always appreciative of that.
That's great. We had Jim Hardy when his book came out. I got a chance to spend over an hour with him. Actually, we spent an hour and a half talking, and I walked away from that going, okay, so that's why I do this podcast, because there would never be an opportunity to talk to Jim Hardy for an hour and a half for free and learn as much as I did in 1.5 hours of conversation.
He's an amazing individual, as well as Hank is, and I learned from Mike LeBove and Jack Lumpkin and lots of people that were here over the years. And but Jim, for sure, he's very giving and wants to give back to the career path that I've chosen. So it's been great.
There are 9 different golf courses at Pinehurst and a putting course, right? That's the 10th? Yeah. Or is that considered the 9th or the 10th? That's the 10th.
Well,
is that a course?
Well, it's not really a course, but
it's 18 holes.
Well, it's 18 holes, so we'll say that's number 10. Yeah.
Okay, but obviously, what everybody is aware of and would talk about is Pinehurst number 2, but because that's been on the U.S. Open and women's U.S. Opens, it's gotten a lot of attention, but that's not where us amateurs should be spending our focus time when we go to Pinehurst. Is that true?
Well, yeah, I think everybody should play number 2 just because of the experience. Now, I think if you're going to go play number 2, you have to take into consideration it's a pretty hard golf course. It does host U.S. Open, so you're not going to tee it up and shoot your best score ever, most likely. But to have that experience, to be able to walk down the fairways and realize that some of the greatest golfers that have ever played have played that same course is pretty neat. Good experience that way, for sure.
Are there opportunities to just walk the golf course without playing it?
Yeah, actually, at certain times of the day.
Oh, wow.
We have some people that will go out there. We're okay with that, as long as they're not impeding play or somehow interrupting play. But yeah, it's a great facility. I mean, it's a wonderful golf course. It's a wonderful. If you stand on or you sit on the chairs that overlook the 18th green of number 2, it's just a wonderful setting. The whole course is magnificent. So, and as other courses we have as well. So, not a bad place to spend your day for sure.
Well, not a bad place to spend a weekend or a week or as much time as you possibly can.
33 years, either way.
Yeah, or 33 years.
Yeah.
Which is your favorite course to play?
I think probably 2 is my favorite, but I think if I were to play one course on a daily basis, it'd be number 4.
Why?
It's challenging from the standpoint of the Ross style greens, but it's a little bit easier for me the way the course lays out. It's not so many long irons into greens and things like that. So if I remember, I'd probably play 4 most of the time. That'd be a fun golf course to play if you had to choose.
Yeah, of course. It's not all private though, right? It's
resort as well. Yeah,
it's resort as well.
Yeah.
How many of the courses are Donald Ross designs?
Well, course 1, 2, 3, 4 was kind of a remake. So really, the first 3, 1, 2, and 3.
And what about the other courses? Who are the participating architects?
Well, between Nicholas and Fazio, we've got the other courses covered. So yeah, it's a nice mixture. I mean, there's a lot of attempt to, say for example, course 8. There's an attempt to keep the shape of the green, the complexes the same. So there's a flavor of Donald Ross that kind of permeates over to the other courses for sure. Now, number 9 is a little different with the Nicholas design, but again, kind of that sloping greens, a lot of challenging putts, very similar, at least in that theme.
Were each of these architects asked to pay homage or respect to Donald Ross design, or was it just like, go for it, do whatever you want?
Well, I think there was probably that attempt to try to keep the same theme going. I mean, the unique thing about our area is that with the Bermuda grass and the sandhills, that whole combination of terrain and grass and temperature, it really does lend itself to what Ross was doing here on courses 1, 2, and 3, where a lot of areas around the greens are shaved down. There's the chance to putt the ball, bump it short of the green, skip it up the hills, and not necessarily always having to go with your high lob wedge and flick it up over the hill and do the traditional thing. Like where I grew up in Colorado, if you were 10, 15 feet off the green, most likely you were taking your lofted wedge and trying to pitch it up high, land it real soft. And the nice thing about these courses is you could play that shot, but also there's the variety of low run shots and chip shot, or even putting. I actually saw Martin Keimer do that during the 2014 Open. He hit a lot of putts from off the edge of the green, and actually quite a bit off the edge of the green, and really did well. So that kind of lends itself to a lot of variety that way.
You're from Colorado, so I mean, you probably thought you were a really big hitter, and then you came down to sea level. What happened?
I did, yeah.
Was that a culture shock for you?
About the first 5 rounds where I was always short. Yeah, I figured. I did figure it out after a couple of years, but yeah, it was pretty. It actually is pretty different how far the ball goes up in Colorado for sure.
Yeah. I'm actually headed up to Utah next week, so we're going to be up high for that one as well.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. So what is it about number 2 that is such that it's the main focus?
Well, I think probably.
I guess for the tour, I would be asking about the tour of the focus of the tour.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the green complexes. I'm kind of giving you my opinion on it. I think
Sure.
that from a perspective of the tour, One of the appealing things about it is, or the USGA, one of the appealing things about it is that it's a very open area where lots of people can be on the course at a given time. It's a lot of nice vantage points to see things. So it's different than some courses where it's really challenging to, once you get off the first row of the fairway, you really can't see much as a viewer. So I think there's some nice strategies there, some nice things about that. From an aesthetic standpoint, it's a great golf course because you see the waste areas, the natural areas that are part of the sandhills of North Carolina. That's always a nice look to it with the wire grass, and that kind of creates a really pretty image between the fairway cut and then you go into the wire grass and the waste areas. I think as a player, I think they like the greens because they're so different, they're so challenging. The approach shot with a 6-iron or a 7-iron, even though you might play some courses over the course of the year where you can really fire it at a pin, sometimes on course number 2 you really can't because the area of miss where you could miss it would be so severe. You almost have to play to different parts of the green and give yourself a run at a putt, and firing it at the hole doesn't necessarily give you an easy third shot. You might have, if you hit it just a little bit past the hole in the air and it doesn't stop in time, you might work your way off the green surface to an area around the green that is nearly an impossible up and down. So it's I think the players like it because of that as well.
Sure. And do PGA pros, when they play the other courses, do they find it as challenging, or they're like, this is a cakewalk?
No, I think course 4 as well as course 8 are very challenging in their own way. Course 8 has green complexes that are very similar to course number 2, as well as course 4 does as well. So a lot of similarities there. When you stretch those courses back to the gold tee boxes, or as much as you can play, it's plenty of length. You don't need to play a golf course any longer. So I think that's kind of the unique thing about those courses. And if you're the amateur golfer that doesn't hit it quite as far, courses 1 and 3 are very challenging. Again, they have the Donna Ross influence, and they play firm and they play fast, and the greens are challenging, and you're just not necessarily hitting a hybrid into every fairway, or rather every green, like you would with some of the longer courses. You're hitting 8-irons and 7-irons, but still facing the challenges of those undulations on the greens.
Okay, so every year I take a golf trip with some buddies, and I've finally gotten them to leave the West Coast, and we were down in Austin, Texas this year, and Tucson, Arizona. Yeah, Austin was a blast. I can't wait to go back. We had so much fun. I want to play Barton Creek when I go down next time.
Oh, good.
But the 4 of us, there are 2 of us that are around 10 to 12. Handicap, and then you got the other 2 who are like 18 to 20. Okay, so if we were going to come down to Pinehurst for a long weekend and play 3 rounds of golf, which courses would you recommend that we play that we would enjoy ourselves and not, none of us like to play a course that is so difficult that we hate ourselves.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, it's never the course's fault that I'm doing so poorly. It's mine,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah, exactly. I would say probably if I were to come to Pinehurst, I would say you definitely want to play number 2 because it's the experience of playing a U.S. Open golf course for that, for sure.
Yeah.
I would probably choose 4 and 8 as well. Those courses from the white tee boxes are plenty challenging, but not so long that it's just a miserable day. I would probably in the afternoon, after you play in the morning, I'd suggest you go out and play course number 3 in the afternoon. Play an alternate shot, or just play some little matches, maybe some match play event between your group, and just have a little fun in the afternoon and go play the courses, maybe 1 or 3 for that matter.
So what is it about 3?
I like the greens. The greens are very similar to number 2 in the shape and undulation, and that's always challenging. It's a little bit shorter, so you're hitting, in fact, I was just out there with our students in the golf school before we were getting together. And I think some of the holes, the players were hitting driver off the tee and then having 8-irons and 9-irons into the greens, where on a course 2 or a course 8, it might be a driver hybrid. So the greens are lots of undulations, lots of challenging areas, a lot of short game shots that are very challenging, but they're attacking the pin or the green with a 7-iron, 8-iron versus the longer clubs. So that's kind of fun, just break it up a little bit.
And there are packages available where we can just spend the entire weekend at Pinehurst and never have to leave?
You wouldn't have to. You'd park your car and walk in the door of the hotel, and transportation will take you everywhere you got to go, and you wouldn't have to go anywhere for meals, or all you have to do is hop in the shuttle and head on over to course 2 from the hotel.
And
pretty easy.
How far from the airport are you? Why are we renting a car? We'll just get a
Uber. You can get a shuttle. Yeah, you can get a shuttle from the hotel. Or from the airport. It's probably about an hour and 15 minutes to RDU.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's not that close, but it's definitely worth coming.
Oh, sure.
It's definitely a bucket list location for golfers.
Well, I think so, and that's where I would encourage everybody to give thought to playing number 2 if there's a tee time available. It's kind of one of those things where it's going to be challenging. You're gonna have a couple of 3 putts, probably a few more 3 putts than you want. You're going to probably hit a nice little chip shot that looks like it's going to stay on the green and it's going to roll into a pop bunker. But that's okay. It's just the experience of being out there and having a chance to play a golf course that truly the vast majority of great players have played.
Yeah. They really have.
It's kind of cool, yeah.
There's some amazing history. What's your favorite historical story about the tour coming to Pinehurst?
Well, I think probably for me the first experience I had really with the tour would have been the 1992. The Tour Championship was here, and that was a lot of fun because that was the year that, if I'm not mistaken, it was 92 because Daly had won the PGA Championship that year. And he was kind of new on the scene, and just all the excitement of a tour event. It had been a long time since I'd been to a tour event, so that was kind of neat. That was a good experience to see all those great players and meet some of the people that were just, and still are, icons of the game.
Yeah, and there are some iconic moments that come off of Pinehurst. You want to share one or two of those?
Well, I think probably just
from your perspective, not from the newspaper perspective, actually.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was thinking of the fact that Ken Duke played so well in the TPC tournament yesterday, and I was thinking of the bunker shot he holed in the Open in 2014. He had just a terrible, very challenging shot on the 9th green. He was in the bunker next to the green, and you're thinking, gosh, I hope this guy gets it out, gets it within 10 feet. And he's studying it and looking at it. He makes it. You're thinking, wow. Yeah, that saved him 2 strokes right there, most likely, yeah. But stuff like that is pretty cool.
Yeah. And do you think that these guys, especially at that level, when they're sitting in the bunker, are they thinking the same thing you are of, I just hope I get it out, or are they thinking this is going in?
I don't know if he was thinking this is going in, but I think he was. I don't think he had much concern he'd get out of the bunker. Where the amateur golfer that we deal with in our golf school probably sitting there going, "Okay, just get it on the green." Or actually, most of our students be saying, "Just get it out of the bunker." But but I think probably was sitting there thinking it's going to be tough to get this close, and I've got to leave myself the easiest putt and the kind of that strategy. And I think when it went in, he certainly appeared to be shocked and surprised and pleased at the same time.
And probably the gallery as well.
Oh, they were just ecstatic. Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty amazing. Yeah. But you see that, just great players create great results, and it was kind of a good example there. And I was just thinking of him just because of the tournament yesterday, how well he played.
Talk to me about this, what I call the 10th golf course, an 18-hole putting area.
Oh, Thistledew, yeah. It's called Thistledew, and it's an 18-hole putting green, and it has a lot of severe undulations and challenging putts, and it's kind of one of those things that's, I guess, if you've ever had the chance to putt the Himalayan course at St. Andrews, kind of the same idea in that regard, that a lot of breaking, just huge, massive breaks, and very challenging to keep the ball within a 2-putt distance. It's a lot of fun. It's a great way to spend an afternoon or after dinner, go out there and putt for a little bit at the end of the day. A lot of fun. Yeah.
And how's the reaction from from your guests on that course?
Well, I think they love it, and I think most of the time. Well, the other day I was walking by and just happened to catch a guy going, "Oh, this first putt should be easy." And after 5 putts, he said, "Well, okay, maybe I'll rethink that," because he hit it about 8. Well, first off, he hit it about 8 feet by, which wasn't a good first putt. But then he misread the second putt. Then he had about a 3-footer, and that turned into a 4-footer. So after a while, of course, his buddies were saying, "Hey, you better pick up because you're slowing us down. Yeah. So I don't know if it got any better for him, but he didn't say it looked easy after that. I can tell you that much.
That's very funny. I love that. I love that story. Okay, all right, let's talk about for a moment. Thank you for sharing that information about the courses. I really want to come there someday. Let's talk about your golf academy.
Sure. It's we have 4-day programs and 3-day programs during the spring for adults. In the summertime, we do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday programs for our juniors, and then we also do weekend schools Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the adults as well. So we kind of have a mixture of programs. Typically, our folks are stayovers where they stay at the hotel. We do members do attend our program as well, but for the most part, it's resort guests, and we basically have the structure to it where, for the most part, the schools begin at 8 o'clock in the morning. We do full swing. We'll do a rotation of different types of short game shots on a Monday. For example, today we did some full swing, then a little chipping and pitching. Tomorrow we'll focus on full swing and some putting. Wednesday we'll do a little bit more full swing with some bunker play and pitching. We mix it up where there's a combination of full swing or a blend of full swing and short game, and then about 11:45 or so we break for a quick bite to eat, and then we take our people out on the golf course and now carry over what we worked on down here at our practice facility. We take it out to the golf course, and we call it transfer practice. Basically, get out on the golf course and work on it in that setting. And
do instructors come out onto the golf course so it's like a playing lesson?
Yeah,
which is probably the most valuable of any type of lesson, right?
I think for our students, certainly we get them hitting it well on the range and they see some progress, but I think a really challenging thing for the amateur golfer is to carry it out to the golf course. Because first off, they very rarely practice on the golf course. They usually go out there and grab a scorecard and try to shoot a score, which is always a very challenging step when you're working on your technique. So making some swing changes. So we spend a lot of time with them out on the golf course and try to carry those changes that we've accomplished in the practice facility out to the course. And again, we call it transfer practice, and that's probably a pretty common term for it anymore. We'll just guide them around, and for example, today with my group, the group wanted to work on their drivers because they kind of had technique issues that would make the driver challenging. So we hit a lot of tee shots, then we did a lot of short game shots, in between mixed in a few wedge shots into the greens and some long irons into the greens, and kind of moved around the golf course and tried a bunch of different things out there, which again, like you say, is a really effective way to work on your game. I wish people would practice more on the golf course. I think probably most of us can't, but it would be nice if you could do that. Yeah.
Well, and it's also really time-consuming for an instructor to be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of commitment when you're asking someone to give you a lesson to do it out on the course.
Well, exactly. We were out there for 2 hours today, and I bet you each person didn't hit more than 30 shots. But it was 30 shots in the setting of the golf course versus 30 shots on the range just raking another ball over, hitting it. That skill practice environment's fine, where you're working on your technique change, but again, you've got to practice in a way that carries it out to the golf course. You've got to do transfer practice. Now, even if you do it on the driving range is okay. Tomorrow, in fact, one of the things we do tomorrow in the school is we will sit down in the morning and talk real quickly about the 6 bullet points of effective practice and talk about how they can do this at their own facilities. And then we have little decks of cards we give out to our students that are either full swing or short game or even putting, where there are now a bunch of games they can play. So out on the range, they can actually hit shots working on their technique, but also play a game that now makes it a little bit more like the golf course than just, again, raking a ball over, hitting it, raking a ball over, hitting it kind of thing.
How many people in a class?
We range from probably most of the time it's 15 to 20.
That much?
Like that. Yeah.
And is it a range of experienced and new golfers all the way across, or do you try to keep them grouped up as, all right, here are our guys who are just tweaking, and here are the people who have never held a club?
Well, we do have, actually in this golf school we have going on right now, we have a golfer that has really never been out on the golf course, a young man from England. And his father's played a little bit more than he has, but then at the same time, the guys I was with their group today, at the same time, the 2 guys that came together, one guy's probably probably a solid 7 handicapper. And so, again, because it's individualized, whether you're hitting next to a beginner or not doesn't really matter because you're working on your own thing. But we try to keep people together with who they came with, and that's always. Now, we do have a couple of husbands and wives that we split up halfway through the school and say, you're going down there and she's going down here, and you need to quit talking to her because you're messing her up. Kind of stuff. But every once in a while,
it was pretty obvious why you're splitting them up. And so
Yeah,
she doesn't
yeah.
hit him over the head with the club, and he doesn't keep telling her she's doing it wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Very dangerous. I went out and played just 9 holes the other day with one of my closest friends and his son, who happens to be my godson. But he was just giving him instruction the entire time, and he's not a very good golfer. I mean, it's like he's giving him stuff, and I'm sitting here, and even though it says PGA behind me, that's for my hole-in-one. That has nothing to do with me giving lessons. And I'm like shaking my head, saying, "Really? Really?" He kept saying, "Just get the ball up in the air. Just get it, scoop it up there." And I'm like, "Oh no, you don't really. You're not really telling him to scoop the ball up in the air, are you?" Oh well.
He did. Yeah, challenging. Yeah. Sometimes the advice they get is not so good. Sometimes it's not bad. I mean, sometimes the advice people offer each other isn't so bad. What we like to do is we like to keep people together. If they came together, most likely they play together. And if they play together, we try to educate the partner on what they're working on and ways we're approaching their swing technique issues. So it gets them engaged more so than anything else. It's better to keep them together than not, put it that way. But if the husband keeps bugging the wife, then he's out. He gets shoved to the side.
Yeah, good for you. Get rid of him.
Enough of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Is Pinehurst open for golf 12 months a year?
Yes, we are. It's questionable weather in January, February, like a lot of the parts of the country. Mm-hmm. This past year was a great example. We had a wonderful Christmas area. I mean, kind of December was perfect weather. People playing golf all the time. And then once we got to January, it got cold and rainy and cool weather, and everything kind of slows down a little bit in that regard. But yeah, we're open 12 months a year. And we'll get some snow and ice at some point, though.
Yeah. And what's the busiest time of year? What should I avoid?
Well, March, April, May are our busiest seasons, and then September, October are pretty busy as a resort as well. So those are kind of the busy months.
Spring and fall, summer just too hot and humid.
It's hot and humid, but probably not much more than where other people are. It's probably a little bit slower from a golf standpoint, a little bit less activity at the hotel. But again, probably the peak of this, to me, the best time of year to show up here is September, October, because it's very predictable. There's no frost delays. Courses are in great shape. I mean, that's kind of an ideal time of year for me if I were to travel here. March, April, May is great, though, as well. In our golf school, we do a lot of our business in March, April, May because people are gearing up for the season. Somebody from Toronto is probably not going to come down to golf school in October. But it's a beautiful time of year to be here, kind of thing. So it kind of depends on what your goals are. But
right, and I would suspect that you get a lot of, I'm here for the weekend. I would just want to do the class because I'm playing in a charity tournament next week, and I need to be better.
We get that every once in a while. We get that every once in a while. Hopefully our students are coming with the thought that they're going to work on their technique and work on it back home versus I gotta play a match next Tuesday, and I'm here for that. But we do get on occasion we get that, yeah. Then you're just trying to figure out a way to help them out and get their scores, get them to score as well as they can. Not really anything long term, but we're more long term. We want to see changes that make them better golfers over the year. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's get to your book.
Sure.
Let's get back to your book, which I'm so excited to get back to your book. It's called Instinct Putting, subtitled Putt Your Best Using the Breakthrough Science-Based Target Vision Putting Technique. This is a unique, I'm going to hold it up so everyone can see it because we'll have this video here. And it is available on Amazon, I'm sure, among other places, your favorite bookstore. What is instinct putting, and why is this guy looking away from the ball, looking towards his target?
Well, the idea started with a request from a guy named Lauren Anderson of Golf Magazine to look at the idea of looking at the hole. There were some tour players that were looking at the hole while they were putting, and so we looked at what are the benefits of it? What would happen if you had somebody practice that way at least? And so we found that with the study that we had one group that putted their distance control drills normal, looking at the ball, and then we had another group that actually looked at the hole while they putted. And we found after a variety of randomizing, moving them back and forth to different distances, that the golfers that looked at the hole while they practiced their putting were better at the end when we post-tested them. They had a lot less dispersion of the putts from the hole, which lent itself to, well, let's kind of look at why that is the case. So what we found is just through doing some other research steps that really, quite honestly, if you practice, at least practice looking at the hole when you're working on your distance control, there's some more of a correlation to amount of stroke you're making, the distance that you're seeing, and it just seems to gel with people that they become more accurate with their distance control on longer putts. And that was basically what we found with the study. And quite honestly, my first looking at it, I thought I must have done something wrong with the information, because I must have typed it in wrong or something, because that was very surprising to me as well. And so we went back and again just kind of confirmed everything, and it was very true. I mean, just look, if you were to take somebody and once they get over the hurdle of kind of doing that, it is a little awkward right off the bat, but if you can just kind of make it through there, that process of just kind of getting comfortable with making the stroke, what we found is that, again, golfers, if you practice your distance control looking at the hole, you can actually improve it by that process versus just looking at the golf ball if you're going to putt 54 putts or something like that. I think a couple things that happened, at least anecdotally, what I saw happen is that when the golfers were making their stroke looking at the hole, they were less inclined to move their body. They were much more stable with their body. So I think in hindsight, the follow-up would be, wow, their technique actually improved a little bit, because had to be a little bit more precise because they were afraid of missing the golf ball. So I think just some things became a little bit tighter, a little bit more precise with the stroke, and that probably helped a little bit as well. Now, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, it's not, you don't necessarily have to go out and putt that way on the golf course, but certainly a way to improve your distance control on the putting green when you're practicing would be to look at the hole and then go ahead and putt some doing that. The nice thing, too, is if you're a golfer that tends to look at the hole when you do rehearsal strokes or practice strokes, now that gives you a little bit more feedback because you've actually putted that way looking at the hole. So now there's a little tighter correlation between the practice stroke and the one that you're putting. Again, out on the golf course, if you look at the ball, that's fine. But the idea is that you're bringing into play your eyes and kind of getting a better sense of the amount of stroke I'm making, is it going to make the ball go the right distance, which is, again, what most people struggle with.
Yeah, I've noticed you saying that multiple times here, is that it's about distance control.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead. I was going to say, well, for me, there's three components to putting. There's the technique, of course, and we're sitting right now in our SAM putting lab. We've got this wonderful equipment that's over my shoulder there. Wonderful at helping you develop your technique. A lot of information with this technology anymore. But the trouble is, the perfect technique doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to hit it at the right speed and you're going to be able to read the greens correctly. And so we spend a lot of time in our school not just working on technique, but also working on the golfers' green reading skills as well as their distance control. And it's hard to learn how to read a green if you're not hitting the ball the right distance. For example, if I hit a putt that breaks right to left 2 feet, and I hit it about 4 feet too far, and it's above the hole, well, I don't really know if I hit it, if I had the right read or not, or did the ball go through the break or what have you. So if I can get the right distance control, now I can start interpreting my reading of the putt and determine if I'm maybe a little bit too much or too little. Most of our students underread putts, like most golfers, which we've actually looked at as well. So it's one of those things where if we can get the distance control, now we can help them read greens, and if we can help them read greens, now the technique is important, but on a 45-footer, if you're hitting it 10 feet by, it's not so good. So a lot of our students spend so much time trying to anticipate what the green's going to do that they forget about distance control, quite frankly.
Oh, that's really interesting, that worrying about what the green's going to do. So they're not really committed to the shot. Once they step up to the ball, they're still second guessing everything.
They don't know how hard to hit. They don't know how hard to hit it. Yeah. Now again, a lot of golf. And this is just what. In fact, I saw this out on the golf course today. Was a perfect example. It was a subtle double break putt. I mean, it was probably about a 45, 50 footer. It's a fifth hole of course number 3. Excuse me, fourth hole number 3. And if you get a little bit above the hole, it's not terribly fast, but it breaks a little bit to the left, and right at the end it'll slide to the right. Nothing major, but probably a foot break either way. And these guys were spending so much time reading the break that they finally putted the ball, and it went 8 feet by. Well, you're not going to make a lot of 8-footers. So even if they hadn't worried about the break, if they had just hit it the right distance, they probably weren't going to be off all that much just because it didn't break that much. Now, if a putt breaks 5 feet from right to left or left to right, then I get that. But a lot of distance putts are really just hitting it the right distance, and just a basic understanding it might slide a little bit to the left at the end, but if I hit it the right distance, I'm going to be okay. Because those are the 3 putts you're trying to eliminate versus, if it goes in, great, but you got to walk away with a 2 putt.
Yeah.
So again, that's what we spend a lot of time on, distance control.
And does instinct putting come into play when you're working on the line, or do you recommend that you keep your eye on the ball when you're practicing your line?
Well, I think it's up to the student. We offer them we offer them the information, and they can kind of decide what they want to do. Certainly, we would encourage them to do the drills of distance control, looking at the hole. If they go out on the golf course and they prefer that, that's fine with me. It's not really a make or break deal for us. I tell you, what's interesting is you take somebody that never looks at the hole, which is next time you get a chance to go out and watch somebody putt, just watch how little they actually pay attention to where they're going. They stand over the putt, they work on their technique and all that. They maybe glance at the hole very briefly, and then if you were to ask them to tell you how far they are from the hole, they probably couldn't tell you. They can't even picture it in their mind because they're very rarely even looking at the target. So again, if anything, gets them a little bit more aware of how far the putt is or how long the putt is. So again, it's kind of, if they want to do it, that's fine. If they don't, that's okay too. But the idea is that what can we offer them as a way to practice that improves some of these technique issues?
I have found when I'm using this method of looking at the hole, I do get caught up of going, am I going to hit the ball? Am I going to hit it straight? I never really thought of it as just a tool in distance control.
No, it can be. I agree. That's kind of the learning curve, is getting comfortable with that out on the golf course. And again, yet you see some tour players actually utilizing this, which is interesting. Again, to me doing that in a tour event when the greens are as fast as they are and all that, that's pretty amazing. But if it helps them, yeah, great. I mean, again, I think the average golfer out there would probably benefit from it, simply because if anything, it's going to probably make their stroke a little bit more correct. Again, there'll be less movement, and they'll learn how to hit it more center of the club. But again, if it helps them with the distance control, or for that matter, makes a few more putts, that's good for me. I like it.
So if I were to ask you for a tip on distance control, okay, let's do it this way. I'd like a tip. Eric, how about a tip on distance control? What could you share with us?
Well, I'd probably say I'd probably do 2 things. One is I would encourage you to start out with just 1 or 2 golf balls and just move around randomly on a putting green. Try different putts of different distances and start seeing if you have a pattern where you start, for some golfers, it starts at about 17 to 18 feet where they start losing control over how far the ball goes. That's their threshold. With 15-footer, it's close enough they can tap it in. But once they reach about a 17, 18-foot distance from the pin, all of a sudden their distance control kind of goes away, and now they're more inclined to hitting it 4 feet by, 5 feet by, things like that. I'd kind of figure out what's your weak area, where does it start? And then from there, I'd really just spend a lot of time working on those distances, because I think statistically you're not going to make a lot of 25-footers, but if you can 2-putt them and move on to the next shot or next green or next hole rather, that's probably a little bit better for you. So I'd say 1 or 2 golf balls, kind of figure out your distance control threshold where all of a sudden you lose some of your control. That'd be number 1. Number 2, I would say once you get control over the distance, now start working on your green reading. Again, a lot of our students don't work on their green reading until they're out on the golf course. It's too late. You don't get like today out on the golf course. We spent some time with our guys working on their green reading skills and distance control. Where in the field of play, out on the golf course, does anybody ever really spend 5 minutes looking at a putt and trying to figure out how it's going to break and putting a couple and experimenting? Our students don't ever work on their green reading. And so they get out on the golf course and their distance control is bad, their green reading isn't so good, and now they can't figure out what's going on. Can't even see patterns. So again, I'd say probably to answer that question, I'd say let's go with 1 or 2 golf balls. Work on your distance control from different distances, kind of figure out where your threshold is, where you start losing control over the distance, and you need to work on it. And once you start getting that a little better, now start working on your green reading to where you can say, I'm going to hit it a foot by the hole or 2 feet by the hole, and now I'm going to see if I'm interpreting the break enough. And most of our students underread putts, so it'll be pretty simple there.
And how about a tip on aligning yourself so that you know that the ball's going to come off the putter head at the direction that you're hoping for?
Sure. I think probably one of the most common things that we're seeing with the Sam Putt Lab is that golfers aim up a little bit off with their original alignment. And then the argument would be that, well, since they're aiming a little right or a little left with the putter face, now their path changes and they kind of change some things that impact. So getting aimed up correctly at the beginning probably is obviously pretty important. So I think probably one of the easiest things to do would be to take a golf ball and have that line. A lot of the golf balls now have the line on the golf ball, or put one on yourself. Squat behind the ball, kind of use that line as a reference point of where you want to aim to compensate for the break, and then just leave that as it is, and then from there stand behind the putt and go with whatever that looks like. A lot of golfers use that, but then they change their mind when they're standing over the ball because it doesn't look right to them. Well, it's kind of defeating the purpose. So, squat behind the ball, get that arrow aimed up, and I put arrows on my golf balls, and I encourage our students to do the same. Put an arrow on there, aim it up the right way. If it breaks a little right to left, kind of figure out how much you think it's going to break. Put the arrow down, get it going where you think it should, stand over the putt, commit to that line, putt it, and just kind of gauge, kind of practice, kind of see if you played enough break or not. At least you're being consistent with the aim. Most of the time, that really helps people with their alignment. Most of the time, the routine people follow, at least what I find, is the routine they follow isn't very effective, and it kind of changes each time. They start second-guessing themselves, and now it's even hard to commit to what they're doing.
Well, I feel so much better about my putting now.
I appreciate that.
Because I put a line on the ball. That's the only reason.
Simple enough, yeah. Well, now exactly. It's funny, but if you don't, what's funny is if you spend all the time aiming it up and then you don't really trust it when you're standing over the golf ball,
right?
Which a lot of people, probably 75% of the people that I meet follow that procedure, then they change their mind when they're standing over the putt. Well, what's the point? And plus, they're probably going to aim it better from behind the ball than they would over the ball. So why not kind of take advantage of that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I notice a lot is that people don't line up even on their long shots. Forget about putting. Just they don't stand behind the ball to line up and see where they want to put their body or things like that. They just step up to the ball and hit, and that could be an issue.
Well, it's the old intermediate target. I had somebody the other day was hitting some shots out there, and I said, "Well, do you use an intermediate target?" They said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Well, where is it?" They said, "Well, it's the bunker about 150 yards out in front of me." It's like, how is that intermediate, dude?
And you meant like 12 inches in front of the ball, right?
Like, maybe 2 feet. Oh, I didn't know it was supposed to be that close. It's like, intermediate, kind of makes it a little easier aim. And of course, he aimed up the face. It's like, well,
so they've got a 180-yard shot, and they're using 150 yards as the intermediate target?
It's going to help a lot, yeah.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. It didn't help.
Don't do that. All right, Eric. Oh man, it was so great to talk to you again. I really appreciate you sharing so much of Pinehurst history and advice on where to play, and really appreciate you coming back and talking about instinct putting.
Well, I appreciate the offer and the chance to be on the show. Great to see you again.